Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to a nice special solo review. A review, by the time you listen to this, is Boxing Day, but it's still an hour left here at Christmas. Everyone is asleep. Everyone's tired. Everyone's exhausted. My name is Travis Snail. I'm here to talk about Soul. Yeah, it's been a bit since, God, I think the last solo review I did was like Antebellum. You can go, you can check that out or don't. But yes, ladies and gentlemen, this is Geek First Podcast. This is a nice special review, and all I want to say is the only reason it's special because there's still that Christmas magic in the air, and all I want to say is a Merry Christmas to each and every one of you. I know we've said this before, but if you're listening to this when it's just releasing, whether you spent time virtual with your family, whether you're alone, whether you had a loved one, whether you had kids, whether you had a dog, even if you're alone, you got movies, you got video games. This is a very strange holiday. That's what we did. It was just myself, my fiance, and our kids. We virtual called a bunch of people. Eventually, you get a little tiresome of it. So yeah, it's not great. It's not an ideal Christmas, but best thing to do is just think about what you have and the little things, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Actually, with Soul, but. Before we get in that, this is Geek First Podcast. Taylor here to give the plug. So all I would say is down below, go down the links, and it has everything we do from video feeds to audio feeds. This one's not live because I'm doing this at a god awful hour, and there would no one be allowed to watch live. But usually we do go live with our newscast or reviews. Like if you're listening the day of on the 26th at 6 p.m. PST, we're gonna be doing our Wonder Woman spoiler review. And usually that's why you just follow Facebook or Twitter, because that's where, hey, we're going live. We tweet out a link, whether it's us, whether it's our podcast network, which has 10 shows 7 days a week. They're going to be doing a Wonder Woman review as well. So there's going to be lots of good content next few days. They got lots of Christmas stuff that was up there. Geek First, we did the Mandalorian finale, which was massive for us. So thank you very much for that. We did our last newscast of the year. We did an After 9. Tons of fun stuff to go check out. And then most importantly, this episode and episodes that will follow it is ad supported. That helps. There's no lights on right now, but you see these nice shiny blue lights. That helps it. Really, it doesn't. This is in my own pocket, but this, everything as far as go back and listen to where we put our bloopers in year one, what our audio used to be to what it is now. That's all you guys. Video, audio, everything as far as us growing. And we've been growing a lot. We're going to talk about it again later on, but this was our biggest month ever, which was crazy. I did not think that was coming for a long time. So we thank you for that. But if you want to go down to below, that's where the Patreon is. So if you don't like ads, you can go get something ad free. The whole feed, every single episode we put in the main feed is ad free. And you're supporting us too. And you're getting content. You're getting early content. You're getting exclusive content. Tons of stuff. Backstage stuff, when we make a movie, you'll get little details about that. I think that's everything. A shout out to Carl Ritchie and Aaron Brain, our Patreon producers at the highest Phase 4 tier. Check out, like I said, our Wonder Woman review. Taylor will drop a Monster Hunter review at some point in the near future. But and as I look around, I realize I don't have a water. So we'll clear that throat because that's all I got. But yeah, I think that's everything. So how's this going to work? I'm going to tell you what I thought about Soul. I'll give you a 3, 2, 1 because I do have some things to say spoilers-wise in this that I will, let you all know and my opinions on and whatnot. But Soul, Pixar, what is... Whoa, my mic, it fell, but caught it with Spidey sense, ladies and gentlemen. What is there to say about Pixar that there hasn't already been said, right? Here's the thing. I used to say that Harry Potter was the most consistent franchise till the MCU, because MCU did 23 movies that I think are all good, and then Harry Potter started putting out Fantastic Beasts, which are far from good. But if you were to ask, just as far as those are movie franchises, if you were asked studios or companies or producers, like kind of a list of, like Steven Spielberg at one point said on his life that Kathleen Kennedy is the greatest Hollywood producer. You can debate that, whatever. There's other ones out there. But if you were to look at companies and studios and developers, it's really hard to argue against Pixar nowadays, It's just it's unprecedented the streak they're on. And of course, you have like a few, in my opinion, with the Cars and even Good Dinosaur, which I wasn't a big fan of. But there's a few you can look at it like, oh, okay, that didn't necessarily hit. But all time, they're just cranking out kind of instant classics. And, just to jump right into it, Soul is kind of that for me. It's a very different movie. But luckily, I've not been really watching Pixar trailers probably since Toy Story 4, which is not too long ago, but even Incredibles they didn't that much, is because on the news cast we do, honestly, Marvel, DC, Star Wars, those are the one that pump the numbers. Some big video games news, Pixar and stuff like that. People are interested, but we've never put out a review and been like, oh, this is one of our biggest episodes. So we're kind of like, we don't really have to talk about them, and we prefer, most of us, to not watch trailers nowadays because they give away so much. And with Onward, I had seen like a teaser, and that was about it. And with this, I had seen the initial teaser, and that was about it. Anytime there was a trailer that popped up, if we weren't talking about a newscast, not going to watch it. So I kind of got to go in semi-clean slate. I kind of knew the plot as far as we're following this this magician, this musician who's kind of down on his luck, waiting for his big break, finally gets it. But then it goes awry because he dies. And then there's just an adventure, that pursues after that. And Pixar, again, this quality that they have it's unprecedented. They deliver here again. This is it sounds weird to sound these two words back to back, and maybe it's not even proper English, but it's just stunningly beautiful, this movie, in both visuals and the story emotional beats. The visuals, this is the best I've seen Pixar look, to be honest. And I know we've gone far with Toy Stories, we've gone far with Coco and stuff like that, but when we are in the real world, my goodness, it's just gorgeous. Some of these shots they show off are absolutely stunning. I just watching this the whole time, even on my TV, not some big theater screen, just going like, this is just looks great. And it is one of those, of course, we'll get in that with Wonder Woman. Of course, I would love to watch this on the big screen, but that's not an option. Especially now, it's not an option here anymore. When our theaters, Canada, where I live, BC, COVID was less of a problem. People go out, spikes, and they go, to be safe, we're going to close these theaters. So luckily, we get Disney Plus here in Canada. Wonder Woman's on VOD here, but I'd love to see it on the big screen. But this is the best way to see it right now, safely. And it was great to have like a kind of mini movie day with my fiance and my daughters. And the movie, it delivered, but I didn't have that high expectations, not because I wasn't interested in it, and not because, it's Pixar, I don't trust them. It's just, I was kind of like, okay, it's there. I know. I think Pixar is just kind of that you write them off because they're already so good. You kind of go, they can't match what they did last time. And I think I always feel that way. And I even like Onward was a movie that I saw the teaser. This I was interested in. Doctor, great director. Jamie Foxx, anytime he's on board. Tina Fey, very two talented people. And just the concept of like, okay, this kind of seems like it's in that inside out realm. I like the kind of jumping into someone's mind or soul and, experimenting with it, seeing what makes a person tick, seeing the meaning of life in a way. And with Onward, though, I didn't have that. And they still were like, man, I really, really like this movie. This is the same thing where I wasn't excited for anything above average, but I just knew it's kind of Pixar, and you kind of go, oh, yeah, they're going to be good. And then it's when they come in, you're like, yeah, they are that damn good, And I'll say the biggest thing about it, as far as, as close as I can get to spoilers without spoiling it, and that's what I talked about before, is I feel most people like Pixar or have a favorite Pixar movie or Pixar movie they really like. So it's not going to be a hard pitch for me to say, hey, if you don't have Disney Plus, go get it. Watch Mandalorian, watch all the stuff, Hamilton, then watch Soul. Because I think especially right now, and a shout out to Lisa from I Love That Movie. She's a guest host on our podcast network, and she's just an overall fantastic podcaster and someone that I've gotten to know this past year and I consider a friend. She had me on her show, and what her concept of her show is, you pick a movie that you love, the guest does, and you talk about it, whether she's seen it, whether or not. And when COVID started, she said that she wanted people on the guest list to pick movies that were inspirational in a way, as far as lots of people are down, right? COVID sucks. But that's not a big shock to say. People are losing jobs. People can't see. Like, it was weird. I didn't see my family members this Christmas, and that's something that I don't like. We found a way to make it enjoyable, and what we did, because kids waking up and seeing presents and Santa and the cookies, like, it was a fun time, and I'm very happy I had my lady and my two little girls and everything like that. But it's still tough, and that's where I chose About Time, because that is a movie that is about these things like trying to, get a promotion in your job and find love. But at the end of the day, it's still just taking a moment to sit back and appreciating what you have and what life is. And the thing is, I feel like, especially lately, it's just this past few years, I don't know what it is. I've had some sort of changes of lifestyles and stuff like that, but not that I didn't appreciate it, but I feel like I didn't personally do that, especially with my first child, Gwen. It's just, you get so busy, as a new father. I think people with kids can understand that. And even not if you don't have kids, you just get busy, and sometimes it's tough to really appreciate. I think lately that's why this movie it hit home with me, but not the way some certain movies go where I go, yeah, I really need to stop and just take a second. But this still reminded me as far as the only thing we did tonight is there's this place called Candy Cane Lane. We go, and in Kelowna, it's like this whole block, and every house has this like they're just decked out in Christmas lights, and you can be socially distanced, you can be outside, mask. You don't really got to worry about. You, of course, there's a worry, but you can stay far apart and try to get some sort of semblance of okay, this is a little bit of Christmas. But even that, seeing Solon go, this was just like you. You remember that like little moments, just like walking with holding my daughter's hand and just her reactions to stuff, and I'm always jazzed about that already, but just take it in because it's just passed by us really quick. And I think that message was great in this movie. I think the cast is really good as far as voice acting. It is a weird, trippy movie at times. It does feel like acid trip type level movie. And that's where it's just like, these guys are really smart. They well thought out and it all works. But I'd say the first 20, 25 minutes, it wasn't slow. It wasn't bad. It was just like, from the little I'd seen, it's like, this is different, and I don't know what I'm excited to go back. I still actually haven't watched the whole Onward trailers, but I'm excited to go back and see how much they reveal because there's like multiple little twists in this movie. Oh, that's interesting. A little twist that in a trailer they probably would have showed, and that's why trailers sometimes suck because seeing it for the first time, I knew about him dying and then going into the soul world, but then after that, there's quite a few little twists or story changes. No idea they're coming, and it was lots of fun. Yeah, like I said, it's hard to not like it'd be easier for me to come on here and not like this movie and say, "Hey, Pixar, they really screwed the pooch. They got another Cars on their hand." But it's just like that football team, that dynasty. I would say Patriots, but they cheat, so I can't say them. But it's just that sports team that just win after win, championship after championship, and that's Pixar. And this is, I think, a great movie, especially right now in COVID. It's a great movie as far as, yes, Christmas is over, but people, there's Boxing Day. Some people have time off. So it's great to gather everyone around. Yeah, I will go into spoilers in a second here. I'm trying to think of anything. And I do this now as far as, because some people don't stick around the spoilers for some of these movies they just saw. One of them a little bit different. But, and you know what? I kind of buried the lead here. I think I can make a case, and it's different because there's a lot of movies that got kicked back to next year, and there's a lot of movies like Promising Young Woman that because there's no theaters, it's going to be very hard for me to see here in Kelowna because we had one independent theater. It already closed down, so we would sometimes get a few independent, like Oscar Beatty type of movies. We'd get them. It'd be a little fewer, but now it's like with them closed, I don't know when I'm going to see Promising Young Woman. There's a few films on my list that I really want to see, but as far as the films I've seen this year, I can make a strong case that I think this is the best film of the year. And yeah, you could say it's kind of an easier year. It's kind of like a sports team winning a championship this year when some people aren't playing because of COVID or they're taken out because they test positive. I understand that. And that's right. I won't say it has an asterisk, but as far as what I've seen this year, it's up there with Birds of Prey and Invisible Man. Those are kind of the three shuffling. But I could make you a case of Birds of Prey I personally like better and will watch more. And it's my favorite movie of the year. But what is the best movie of the year? Soul just kind of checks off every single box you want out of it. And it's just, I don't want to say anything too much as far as a spoiler, but it's just one of those movies that it made you feel great at the end of it. And it's just kind of reminds you, it reminds you stuff about life, but also just reminds you, man, if you're listening to this podcast or you host a podcast, I love movies, and that's I feel like Keanu Reeves, I love movies, I love making movies, but that's what this felt like. This just was really like already, I don't know if they knew this. I think they just released it because they want to get out there for Oscars and everything like that. But it just felt like the perfect Christmas movie of, yes, I had my girls, my fiance, and we were having a great time. But there's still this little bit of, man, I wish I could see some of my other family members. I wish I could see my sister or my dad or my mom and stuff like that. And, a video call will suffice because to me, it's like, do it now so later on it gets better. That's the way it happens. But this was one of those just like, if there was any part that was still a little sad of me, it just kicked me. Yeah, like, come on, like life. It can be so great. And I like those type of movies. There's a fish out of water element kind of here. There's like a kind of Freaky Friday sort of element here. There's a lot of like fun little tropes, but they make them unique. And like I said, the first 20 minutes, it was not that I was gonna like, oh, I'm disliking this movie, but it was okay. This is different. Is this gonna be the whole movie? This is a really kind of spacey and heady and like making you think about like life after death and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm going to throw to the spoilers right after this ad break. As we've said before, the ad breaks help support this. This helps grow this, helps gain more listeners. This helps us improve on the audio, the video, every single thing about the podcast, because we try to make this the very best podcast possible for you guys, for us, doing this as much as we can. So I thank you very much for listening to this ad. And then after that, we'll be right back. We're back. Yeah, so we are getting into spoilers now for Soul. Nothing too earth shattering. It's not a Wonder Woman. It's not a, you know, Birds of Prey. It's not a, Endgame or Far From Home. But still, there was some stuff that I wanted to talk about that I couldn't talk about in spoilers. And as far as it being the best movie of the year, that's where I'll start, because there's not too many flaws, because I can't. Oh, is his name Martin? Let me look at. Oh my, look at that! My phone light's still on. It's ruining the blue aura. If you're watching if you're not, if you're just listening, I got the blue soul aura on. But I've already forgotten his name, and I know I'm sorry. It's been a long day. It's not gonna be like, oh man, the Tenet review we had and some of the podcasts. You forgot the character's name. How can you really like the movie? It's not about script or stuff like that. It's about characters, and it's not about getting the story right. It's a wild 1-star review, so that was great. And it brings up, but it doesn't have their names. Come on now. And I know Mr. Wiggles was the cat, but let's see. Joe was the guy, and you got Moonwind and 22 for Tina Play. So all great stuff. So with Joe, I think it's a story that everybody can relate to, and especially myself as a younger person was just like, because I come from a family that we weren't, living paycheck to paycheck, but we didn't have like luscious, amazing things. And that's the thing where it's talking about like Christmas and everything like that. Like, eventually when things changed and parents get different jobs and I got older, kind of, life was like, you get a bit more here, and then it's like trips and stuff like that. But when I was younger, it was like, you get what you get and you don't complain. But it's still that they always made it super special and super Christmas, or super Christmas, super memorable for a Christmas. But it's when I was younger, it was always money was like the main goal. And it's not even that like I said, it's not even that we were poor or anything. It was just that I always wanted like that moment in Batman Begins when he's like, I'm buying this hotel. I wanted that. And you know what? Would that be nice to have? Sure. But I think that's something that happens when you're younger. There's lots of material things. And it's just even stuff as far as dating. And you got to think everything has to be perfect. This has to be. And, I love my fiance and everything like that. I'm not saying, oh, it's not perfect. But there's things you learn when you're dating people and you're in a relationship that you have to work through and you have to talk and correlate. It's not just like the movies, it's not just like what people want love to be or you talk to your friends about in high school and stuff like that. And I think that's a good thing in the beginning of this movie because it sets up Joe as this massive dreamer. And dreamer to so bad an extent that he just belittles his life that he has already, whether it's himself, whether it is the people around him. He doesn't feel like his life is worth anything. He literally, when he dies, he goes into, and 22, if you're just somehow listening along, is Tina Fey's character, the soul. So he goes into the soul realm, which that's where it got really trippy. When you go to the beyond, it's like I guess after, it's like maybe the heaven. I don't know. It's just really like this, like very different art style. It's not Pixar. It still looks beautiful, but it's almost like a computer graphic sort of like sketched place where they're going to, like, I'd say heaven or hell, whatever the deciding factor is. And it's this elevator that goes up. Really cool. Very like Pink Floyd-ish. Some of the things they're doing, like opening up, very, very psychedelic. So I liked all that, but the idea is, okay, so he dies and he's supposed to go there. And then some people that had this massive life can stay back and be like soul coaches. And these little souls, which are like the babies, they're getting them ready to be going in the real world, right? So when he's with 22, he looks around, and I love this part where they go, "Oh, how do you view my life?" Because he's saying, like, I'm not, what was it, beyond Borkensching? Like, he was pretending to be this great musician, and he wasn't. So he's like, how can you view your life? And he puts his hand on wherever it shows his entire life to 22, like what he's done, where he's been. And he just looks so disappointed. And he literally says his life is meaningless. And there's still people he loves. There's still his mother. There's still her friends. There's still people like his students that he values. But because he didn't get to this tippy top, because at one point before he died, he's a band teacher. He gets offered a full-time gig. His mom's excited because he's never had a full-time job. He's always chasing the dream of being a musician. And he's reluctant to take it. When he walks into his office, he just has these posters and pictures of great musicians that became this big deal, right? So I think that is like one thing that really hits home because I feel like as you get older, that happens a lot less. But when you're younger, I think that happens all the time. I'd say in that like 20, and it probably still happens to many people of like, you see somebody with this new car, you go, I wish I could have that car. You see somebody with you see somebody with the PlayStation 5 and it's like people that have the money or maybe they don't have the money. Oh, I wish I could have that. As Taylor likes to quote from the Fan Menace, there's always a bigger fish. And I think that's the thing I learned, kind of not a few years ago, probably longer than that, but within the last decade was there is always a bigger fish and you got to be happy with the fish you have. Of course, you can try to want to achieve more and get more and try and get that bigger fish one day, but don't just sit around and be all mopey because this is the fish you have. A fish that's very good, a life that's very good. And that's where this movie rang true with me as far as luckily it was an epiphany moment, which is I hope it was for some people, but watching Joe is like, I've been in this situation because you just think like, oh, if this didn't go exactly the way I planned it, I've ruined it. It's the same way as far as stuff like even me doing filmmaking. Like when I got out of high school and I was like, I gotta do it and stuff like that. And I just like kind of got so focused on, and that's something I still want to do as we've announced with Geek. We're making a movie and things like that. I hope it happens. And even then after that, we've talked about like, hey, even if our friend, we're taking the Kevin Smith approach of, we're making a movie for our friends to enjoy, and if anything beyond that happens, great. But if not, we're going to do it. And I have a career now. I do this podcast. It's kind of like a second gig. So that the film's like a third gig. And it's like, you know what? I'm going to put my heart and soul intended to it, but I'm going to be happy with it. Where before it was like, I think that's why I didn't go to film school too, because it's like, one, I was not going to put myself in debt. I never want to be in debt. I've seen that before. But two, it's like, well, I got to wait till I'm perfect and ready and life completely lines up. That's not how it goes, and that's where I think that's the great thing with this character of Joe. He learns like that's not how it goes. Life just isn't perfect, just always doesn't line up. You just kind of have to go with the flow. And just because you're not reaching these top high points of, this is what you vision, this is your dream. Your dream can kind of morph and become something other. And that's where I like that one point, these kind of one of the catches. That's why I don't know if it's shown in the trailer. His whole thing is 22, played by Tina Fey, has seen enough of Earth. She's never been to Earth, but she's seen Earth and goes, I don't want anything to do with Earth. I'm happy being up here. And he goes, well, and they have these badges, and she has her one last thing she has to fill up on this badge, and she kind of gets this life badge, so then you can go put your soul into a body. He goes, well, if you want to stay up here, let me work with you to get that patch, and then give me that. And she goes, great. They find a way that there's some sort of other way you can go into the bodies. There's a mix-up. They fall together. He ends up in the cat body, Mr. Wiggles, and then she, 22, this soul that's not been anywhere, that's supposed to go into a baby's body, it goes into Joe's body. And there's lots of hijinks. That's the fish out of water. That was all fun stuff. I liked it. Great back and forth. But I think the moment that shows it the most is when, Joe/22 is collecting things throughout the movie. He takes out his pocket, like, look at all this, and he just has a leaf at one point. He's talking about how beautiful it is. He's like, I could be a sky watcher. And that's where it's just like the little things in life can be so much more meaningful. Like they're going to be the things you probably look back on instead of, hey, I made this amount of money. Hey, and that was one thing I always chase too, is someone doing landscaping is just like, hey, I can always try and ask for more and get more and blah, blah. And of course, I want to, have job security, have more money. Everybody always wants those things. But there's definitely times in my life where that was the goal and the only goal. And that's what I think this movie puts in perspective of. You could have these goals, but don't put it so far above the other ones where you forget the rest of your life. Don't put it aside to try and get this goal that you don't know will maybe never even happen. Appreciate what you have now, whether it's family, friends. I think that was a good thing as Christmas as far as, it's like, oh, it's a little depressing during COVID because I can't see those people. But the thing is, hold on to that. See them virtually, talk to them, text them, and hold on to that because when the world gets better and people start getting better and vaccines are all great and everything like that, and you get to do that big group hug, that's like, you got to appreciate that. And I think right now, that time where with COVID, you kind of lose that because you just go, I don't care. I just want to do and get the long run. But I hope people, not to get political, I hope people aren't doing that. I hope that even in these times, you are appreciating the little things. You are appreciating that if you're listening to this podcast, hey, you can pay for Wi-Fi right now. Hey, lots of my family members are still alive. And that's the thing. Lots of bad things can happen too, but just you got to try and find the good in it. And I think that was the journey, especially too. It also makes you selfish. And that's what this movie did as well. Is Joe at one point, they go to this barber because the other gig is, so he is in this band. One of his students passes on to like a band, like a more famous one, that, hey, I know this piano player. He's really good. It's for jazz. You should give him a shot. He goes in there and plays, and she goes, like, the kind of lead singer of the band goes like, where have you been this whole time? Like, you're great. Like, you're coming to play this gig 7 to more or whatever the time is. And he's like, great. And that's when I love the little montage of, like, he's almost getting killed multiple times and he falls down the drain cell, which he doesn't get killed. He just goes in coma. He goes, like, in multiple comas in this show. So I don't know how that's doing for his brain damage after, but so all these hijinks, they switch the bodies, and they do this great scene where he wants to get a haircut for tonight, and he's the cat, so he's telling himself, what, 22's in the body, like, hey, we got to cut it. He gets the shaver, the cat's him as the cat. Jamie Foxx's cat is trying to shave his own body. It's too heavy. He slips. He just cuts right down the middle. So they go to the barber, and then they have this conversation of Joe, who is 22, is in Joe's body, is enthralled and so interested in everybody's life. And she is talking about all these different things, and they're like, wow, I didn't think about it. I didn't know you're like this. And then kind of off to the side, as the scene's ending, kind of go, oh yeah, I didn't know you had this in you, because you just kind of talk about jazz, and that's it. You never ask me how I am. You never ask, and they don't do it in like a bad way, but it's just kind of like, Joe's is a nice guy. It's not like they're trying to make him seem like an asshole or anything, but he's just so focused on this one goal. He's losing sight of everything. And yeah, sure, maybe it's just some friends at the barbershop, but still, it's just like anytime they come in there, it just feels like he's being selfish, and he's, kind of empty, like an empty vessel. Just, I'm here to talk about what I want. And that's a good thing where in life I learned, you don't want to just make, in a conversation, never make it, especially, hey, single guys, single girls, if you're trying to find somebody, make it that you're just waiting for your turn to talk, Make it that you are interested, or try to be interested, or try to understand what this person is saying. And that's what it sounds like Joe did not do at all. It was just the Joe show, right? But he sees from the outside, because now he's the cat, no one knows he's there, that, hey, maybe I have not really invested in anybody else or anything else other than this one thing that I really, and of course he still wants it, but there is still more to life. And so 22, in the roundabout way, takes appreciate all these things, and he has collected all these things in his pocket, and he takes it out. And that's where one of the kind of movies were or one of the parts in the movie at the end where you kind of get a little emotional is Joe and 22 have this falling out. He kind of says, the only reason you started liking music because you were in my body. They have a falling out. Joe goes back to the real world. 22 goes back up the soul world as a lost soul, which we'll get into because there's some cool stuff there. But then he reaches in his pocket and he sees all the stuff that 22 collected throughout their little venture. And it's like a bead, like a leaf, and like a bitten pizza that's pretty much just the crust, and all these little things. And he thinks back to when 22 was Joe, like how much fun or how much satisfaction or how much just fulfillment she got from that, where he kind of feels nothing, which is, he realizes sad, because there's this great moment where he, like, 22 as Joe lies in the storm drain or something like that, the storm grate they have like in big New York where like steam comes up, and he's just laying there, and she's like laughing because it's the first time she's felt anything like this, or like pizza and everything like that, where we do lose that, we do lose where, hey, fuck, pizza's just so good. And like, yeah, sure, it's a little thing, but next time, whatever your choice of food is, because pizza's my favorite food, eat it and just take a second, be like, oh, this tastes so good. Like for me, it's like the pizza's cooked right. If it's stuffed, they got stuffed crust on the pizza. Ooh, this crust is edible. It's not too hard. It's just little stuff, and that's where I would recommend. Like I talked about at the beginning, go watch About Time. It's very similar, but the movie just kind of hits that home multiple times, and I'd feel in a subtle way, like not in a subtle way, but like not in a full-on pushing this in your face, because with themes like that, many movies fall in that trap where it's just so over the top. There might be a movie we're reviewing tomorrow that has that, but I think they did a really good job with it, and they have quite a good journey with him and 22. And like I said, 22 has this moment where she becomes a lost soul because she kind of believes in nothing and she's going nowhere. She's not going to Earth. She's not really training to go to Earth, so they become like these big monsters or something. It's kind of like Don't Look Under the Bed, if you remember that Disney Channel movie when if you had an imaginary friend and if you stop believing them, they turn into a boogeyman. It's kind of like that, where it's just like, and that, the kind of like the dead world, the beyond world, stuff like that. That is very inside out as far as you have these characters that run it like an operation and stuff like that. And it was very cool to see. But the same thing as far as like kind of Bing Bong, right? You forget about me goes away. This was like the souls being forgotten, but instead of being going away, turns into like this big soul giant monster. And that was really cool. There's the one moment where Joe realizes that because he plays the gig and it goes great. But then when he walks out, he doesn't feel anything. He feels like satisfied, but he's expecting his life to completely change. And I've had that before. I had that, I think, differently. None of that was my situation. I think there's times even in the podcast that happens where you think this is going to be a big thing. It happens. You're like, okay, it's just another day. I think for me early on in my young life was dating. Where it's like, people love the chase and everything like that. And you love chase and you go. And I remember this one time. I think it was just a girl that, because I asked out, wasn't that interested, and just like, no, I think we could date. I think something else could happen there. And it was just like, because this person had a boyfriend at the time. And it's a long story. This is an After 9 conversation. Check out After 9 at the Patreon call-in show. But the long story is, so there was like just months of build-up. It was like the classic like rom-com thing of back and forth. I don't know, blah, blah, blah. And then I'll just say it, some stuff happened. Good stuff happened. I remember the next day, though, just waking up and just being like, the buildup was for nothing. And it was great. It was a fun night, but it was just some things get so built in here where you think this is going to be the thing that changes your life. And this was at a point where, because I always said this in the story with my fiance, I was like, I'm done dating for now. I'm not really looking for anybody. This is the point where, oh no, like I want to find a girlfriend. I want to be committed. I want to, because I've not had that too much in my life. And I did that and I just went, yeah, and this isn't the one, and this isn't exactly what I thought it was going to be. I thought this was the answer. And I think people have that many times, whether it's career, whether it's other life goals, whether it's dating, stuff like that. I think the answer to life is kind of what they put forward as well. It's the whole package. It's everything. It's the people, it's the good times, it's the bad times, it's the highs, the lows, all of that. And he was expecting it to completely change. And she just said, well, no, I'll see you here tomorrow and we'll do it again. Like, okay. Excuse me. So it's like he reached his huge goal, this heavy bucket list moment, but it was just a thing. And I think that's when he starts to realize too, because he has that's this thing with the souls is they talk about they got to find their spark and things like that. But spark is just finding the meaning of life. It's just finding out that life is important. But Joe takes that as like everyone has to find what they are meant to do on earth. But he slowly realizes that people choose what they want to do. No one's meant to do that. And that's where it gets in some like existential sort of like, because some people believe in destiny or some people believe things happen for a reason. That's a whole different conversation. But this character kind of realizes that, there might be a little bit of kismet there, but really I'm creating my own path. And I wasn't put on this earth to do music. I chose music. And they also established his dad was a musician. So it kind of got passed down. If his dad wasn't a musician, maybe that wouldn't have happened. The same way 22 gets informed by music because he is a musician. He is kind of her father figure in a sense. So he at this point is realizing, hey, I got to go back, because this is when he told 22 they split off, because there's this great moment where they're at the jazz club, they're going to make the big moment, everything like that. He, as the cat, Mr. Wheels, has gotten 22 as Joe to the club, and they realize, hey, they have this guy, what's his name? He kind of is like a, Moonwind. He's kind of like a hippie, but like, he's the classic guy in an alien movie. It's like the aliens are going to invade. And you go, no. But he was right the whole time. He's like this where he can sense that other world and he knows all these things and he can talk to Jamie Foxx as the cat and understand him and all this stuff. So he creates this barrier for them to switch back bodies, or for 22 to go in the soul world and Joe to go back in his real body. And 22 is just realizing of like, hey, no, like I do actually want to stay in this place and I love music. And that's when Joe's like, no, you just love it because it's my body, blah, blah, blah. That happens, and there's just a great moment where he's just like, I'm not giving back the body, and he just runs as Joe, and there's a chase scene, and that's where he gets hit unconscious again in a coma-like status. So there's this great moment. 22 goes up there, and that's when she becomes the lost soul. He goes back, he plays because he realized, you know what, I had my chance, I had my life. When he looks back on it, it was a great life. He thinks about photos and seeing his mom laugh and good times with his dad, hearing jazz for the first time, and again, I think he realizes that before, he had all these moments in life. All he saw was the first time he discovered jazz. Now he's seeing all those moments together, all the important ones at the same level as jazz being the top, the tippy top. Now there's a bunch of moments at the tippy top. And when he looks back, before when it was meaningless, he kind of goes, you know what? My life was good. So he decides, okay, well, I gotta go and give her a chance, because the thing is, she doesn't get that now. She got this life badge, and she she's just gone. She slinks away. She has no purpose. She turns into this monster, and he's chasing her, trying to get her down. She's running away. She turns around, and this big purple monster eats him and takes him into this kind of like weird stoic, like, you know, where the dead people are in Hercules, like that sort of, just like you can't talk to anybody but you see things. But the cool thing is they had shown these flashbacks before of her talking about mentors, and it's like Abraham Lincoln and people's like that, and just kind of telling her no, because most of the souls are always wanting to go to Earth. It seems like she's the soul that was reluctant and didn't really get it. So she's on this path as far as she's become this lost soul. She eats Joe, the lost soul eats Joe, and he gets brought into this realm, and it's all like black and dark, but it's like pulsing, and it's like, again, very trippy stuff. And all these mentors are these big, almost like what were those things in Man of Steel that they, you know, kind of transformed into, and had like the, you know, it's that metal toy that you put your face into. It's like sand. It's, you know what it's like? It's like Imhotep when he becomes the sand monster. It's like that, but it's images of the mentor, kind of just telling her she can't do anything. So she's become in this like state of depression, and that's kind of to me what the allegory was. And this is somebody extending the hand to try and get them out of it. And it's just because I think we've all had that when we're down on certain things, life, job. You think about the worst, and then you just get stuck in that rut for a little bit. But hopefully you can get yourself out. If not, something or someone in life can. And that's what Joe is. But even then, Joe's going to see her, and there's an image of him as this big sand dark monster being like, you only like music because of me. But so it's just like he's become part of the problem. He beat her down as far as her emotional side, what her goals were. So she has none of that. And she's literally just as the soul curled up in a ball over there. And he eventually has to fight through all the monsters, blah, blah, blah. He talks to her, tells her, you know, he tells her everything every time on the interview. It's all these great things, and I had a life. You got to go. You deserve it. He sends her off, and it's a great moment. It's very Spider-Man Miles Morales. Like, you got to go home. Like, you know, yeah, I'm butchering the line, but I can't remember. It's something about like a kind of a fall from grace or something that Peter and Miles take. It's a leap of faith. And it's kind of like that. And she's kind of like, I'm not ready. And he goes, well, I'll go with you. And she goes, well, you can't go with me. He goes, well, I'll go as far as I can. And it was just, that was such a great moment, because there's like a little portal, and they jump, and it's leading to Earth. And he's just talking through her, getting her through this moment. And then right when they get to Earth, he's like, look, there it is. And then he kind of pushes her away, and she goes off, and it's really beautiful stuff. Like the last back half of this movie is classic Pixar, where they're just laying on. We're like, oh my God, this is breaking me. Like, and they do a fantastic job of that. And so he goes back up, the kind of like life gods, which they're like, those are like hand drawn, where they're like lines, they're 2-dimensional, and they just kind of say like, what we're all about here is inspiring people, but you inspired us, and they say we want to give you one more chance. So they send him back, and he kind of has this epiphany of like he has a new life. It's still a life, but it's still Joe, but he has this new outlook on life, and he's like, I don't know what I'm going to be doing next, and that's kind of a good thing. And he walks out of his house so fulfilled. He's in a nice suit, but he walks out so fulfilled because, yeah, maybe it's music, maybe it's something else, maybe it's just living, but he's had this experience to, one, teach the value of life, but two, it's like, well, I can choose a new path if I want. And this is where I wouldn't dock it points, because this is a like con where there's always, where I think on Geek First when we do reviews, there's stuff we talk about, oh, I would have wanted them to do that. That's just us kind of having fun, doing what is, theorizing. Usually those don't really take into account the score unless it's something really big, like, hey, I really wish, you know, I didn't see that boom mic. I would have wanted not to see that boom, you know, like something like that. So, of course, it plays a little bit in the effect, but this point doesn't, because it's just like me putting this out here, but I thought for sure, at first I thought, oh, he's not going to get back into his body, because they did this cut of showing him just like grabbing a life badge, going to Earth, going back in the club, like killing it, and then like doing good and his life's better. I was like, oh, they've shown us that, so we're probably not going to get that, but it was just a longer version of it. I thought for sure, and I would have liked to have seen this, I thought with him being a band teacher still, it was going to like jump 10 years later or 6 years later, whatever it may be, and you'd get to see 22 as a child go into that class and them just kind of have a moment of recognizing one another. They kind of say that, like with 22 or the souls, once they go and get birthed, it's like it's a clean slate, but there'd be that kind of like, you know, kismic of like, there was something here, like, you're meant to, like, something, just a little sign of, hey, I know you and you know me, and, great to see you. And then they move on with their lives. I was kind of hoping for that, but we didn't get that. But that's like the only, like I said, that's just like I wanted that. That wasn't really a big complaint. The music's great. The score is phenomenal because, like, I'm a massive Nine Inch Nails fan. And Trent Reznor, since he started, maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like his first one, Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. And ever since then, he just dominates. He's so good. And I really like what him and Ross are doing. So, yeah, did I even rate it before? I don't. I said I was getting a spoiler, non-spoilers. I didn't, and it's like it's tough. Like, like I always hate this because people always, like, I think, sometimes accuse me of throwing out the perfect score too much. But I always say no movie's perfect. Even when I've given the perfect score, there's still some I could say a flaw. It's just kind of my enjoyment level out of it, and I'd have to look. I've maybe done it for series, but for movies, I don't think I've had one this year. I had less last year, and this one I don't know if I have. So I'm throwing those double digits. I'm throwing that 10 out of 10 because it's just, I can't, it's a combination of enjoyment, and I can't find anything personally wrong. It's been one watch. Things change all the time. The same way for me, Spider-Verse was a 9.5 because I thought there were some plot holes. And then when I watched, I'm like, this is a clear 10. The second time when I was like, there was something about that where the first time I loved it, but the second time I saw it, I was like, this is maybe the greatest comic movie ever made. So that can happen positively, negatively, but most of the time my scores, they're maybe going up or down by 0.5, never full points for the most part. There's been some cases like Rise of Skywalker, I should have failed it, but it's just it was a movie I needed, and that's what I talked about at the moment when to cap off this review, when he sends 22 off and he's alone and he's going up the conveyor belt and it looks like he's going to die or pass on, right? And he had just got this gig. He has a new lease on life or look on life. And with it being Pixar, I know they're fully capable of going for the sad ending. I know, like, sometimes when you're watching movies, you go, oh, they're going to, I won't say cop out, but you just know, oh, they're going to do this. Like, it's a movie. They don't want to be sad. But Pixar, they'll be sad. They'll make you sit back and think about stuff. So I just sit there and be like, I just want Joe to get another shot. I just wish there was a way. I hope there's a way. And they go a little while, he's going up that thing. And then once that, whatever ran the soul realm person pops up and talks to him about, like, oh, you've inspired us. And that was the most I'm about, like, this is like cheering, like, yes, like, Joe, good. Like, you did it because you're pulling for the little guy. And that's where it was great to have that moment because I've seen a lot of great movies this year. But that really had, like, there's TV series I can tell you had that cheering moment, but as far as the movie goes, this was just like a cheering out of, like, delightfulness and hopefulness and all that, just kind of good, warm, gooey stuff. Which, you might go, that's not my type of movie, but give it a shot because we all need some warm and gooey stuff. Whether it's this movie, whether it's a cookie, it's good stuff. So yeah, I give it that 10 out of 10 just for enjoyment. Great movie. Like I said, I don't know if it's my favorite movie of the year. I think that might still be kind of Birds of Prey. I'll have to figure out when we do Golden Geeks. But as far as the best movie this year, I think this is it. And I think Pixar just kind of has, like, another winner on their hands. And I'm very excited to hear other people's experiences and what they thought. You let me, let me know if you had any of the same pros that I did. If there's any cons that you didn't like or any things you thought you didn't like, point that out. Love to talk to you about it because I'm sure most people are just watching Wonder Woman and they'll get the Soul eventually, but I'd love talking about Soul. So thank you very much for tuning into this solo review. Like I said before, everything you need is down below in the description. Please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. We're almost at 200 reviews, and give us a nice 5-star. We get the 200 reviews. We get a nice 4.0 average. Can make some moves on some other stuff. So we thank you very much for tuning in, or I thank you very much for taking your time out of your day to listen to this, day, night, morning, whatever it is. Thank you for making me a part of it, and which will be one in 1984. That will definitely not be boring.